I don't have any student loans. Leave me be.
Hello, Mr. Director.
I'm sorry, who is this?
My name is of no concern. However, should you wish to address me by name,
you may refer to me as Bill.
Okay, I'm listening.
Good. I'm glad that I have your attention. Now listen carefully. I am fully aware that you have planned to review Death Note for some time now. I am calling to warn you. Step down now, while you still can. This is a dangerous path to be taking. If you were to make one wrong statement, there is a legion of fans out there that will not abide. They will hunt you down without a moment's notice. That would be quite a shame, Mr. Director. I am advising you to stay clear of this subject. Refrain from your...
This is stupid.
I'm sorry. What?
This whole subplot thing, it's stupid.
I don't follow.
Look, I've tried to rewrite this thing like 4 or 5 times at this rate, and each time I do it, this subplot makes less sense. So, you know what? I'm not even gonna bother with it.
You can't do that.
What do you mean I can't? This is my show. I can do whatever the hell I want.
You have to listen to me. The fan base...
Oh, the fan base.
What I told you was correct.
Your temper is about as short as you.
What did you just say? You went out of a switch on it!
Listen to me, Director. You're going to get yourself killed.
Okay then, wise guy. Explain to me then why I should stick with this same format that I've always stuck with for so long just to appease everyone when it's clearly not aiding my creative process, nor is it getting the video out any faster, huh? Oh, what's wrong? Nothing clever to say? No little intellectual divine wisdom as to why I should do it? Oh, yeah, that there isn't. You know why? Because I stopped writing your lines! Brace yourself. This is gonna be a long one. People often give many different analogies for life. Me? I'd say it's a lot like a game of solitaire. Some people are given easy hands. Some have to work for a win. But for the rest of us, we're often given hands so bad that it's hard to tell if we'll ever win. Case in point, I've had to remake this video so many times at this point that I've practically gotten sick of it. I've had second thoughts, I've had cameras malfunction on me, I've been so bombarded by workload and time that I've had no time to work on this. So I've decided that I'm just going to try to clear this as best as I can and not worry about the end outcome, because I have a lot better things to focus on, and I really don't want to spend any more time with this, so let's just get this over with. So Netflix has become kind of infamous for not having much oversight with the things they put on their streaming service. There are a few shining gems, like Season 2 of Stranger Things, BoJack Horseman, Agetsuko, and others. However, most of the ones people seem to latch onto are ones that I, as well as many others, can't stand on the slightest. The most obvious offender of this, of course, is 13 Reasons Why, a show that suffers from, in my opinion, something I'm going to deem from here on out as Ready Player One syndrome. See, this happens when you think about a piece of media, and the moment you do it, it starts falling apart, and the more you think, the worse it gets. Also, this scene. This scene really made me want to strangle a goose.
You're in space. Why aren't you having fun in space?
Why does nobody talk? Why is the movie so long and nobody talks about anything?
I mean, at least talk about the fact that holy shit, you're in outer space.
I can't vouch for the original movies, however, because all the ones that I've seen are egregious and unbearable. Cloverfield Paradox, Full Metal Alchemist, Bright, all of these are just so underwhelming that they're forgettable.
It's just a small example of Netflix not having much oversight for their content. And as a result, most of the things that they end up putting out are, well, really hard to sit through.
Now, take this already unstable premise and add on Hollywood's really bad habit of adapting everything and anything under the sun.
I mean, books, sure, you've got your nostalgia acid trips with a side of cheese to your Wattpad Twilight fanfictions being made into full-length movies, but games and other shows are just as fair game.
And wouldn't you know it, anime's not immune to it either.
Now, if I really wanted to bash anime, all I really had to do was talk about America's Ghost in the Shell, or hit the lower hanging fruit that was Dragon Ball Evolution. However, I think if I want to get my point across with both bad adaptations and Netflix's lack of oversight, there's only one movie that I can truly talk about to cover both at the exact same time, and that movie is none other than Adam Wingard's Death Note. Oh boy, do I have plenty to talk about on this one. And I'm not just talking about source material either. You could easily argue that one all day, but honestly I think the internet's beaten that one to a dead horse already. So instead, I'm going to try to focus more on why this movie didn't work as a whole, and purely why this illustrates my point with Netflix. You want a good example of bad writing, bad directing, bad acting, just bad everything in general just for the sake of getting an audience? This is the perfect example to do it. And honestly, this had potential to be good. Foundation was there. This could have been something pretty damn good. So what the happened?
Well, we're not gonna get anywhere, just, you know what, it, let's just get this over with.
The movie opens with Light sitting outside admiring a girl, Mia, who's supposed to be Misa, when it starts to rain out of nowhere.
Must be in Missouri.
But a mysterious book falls from the sky, so Light goes to pick it up and head back inside. He's then stopped by— oh god damn it!
Why do anime adaptations keep putting in these stupid bully characters?
Hey, I don't need your help, okay?
I thought you were gonna do? Out here all by yourself, come teach me a lesson?
So this is the first time we get to see Light deal with confrontation. In the anime, Light was very methodical, intellectual, and calm. He did lose his cool a couple of times, sure, but only in situations where he had been beaten. He hated losing, but he would always remain cool and collected. And even if he did lose, he would be right back on track a few moments later, just planning the next move.
So, keeping that intellectual in mind, this is like Turner's best retort.
No, I think it's very sad, actually. I only mention it because that would make you over 18, which means that if you were to beat me up, which I'm sure you could, it would technically be child
abuse. Kenny, the head bully, knocks the light out of him, and the principal calls him in for having other students' homework.
Are you not going to address the bruise on his head?
Are we really not going to discuss the fact that I have an ice pack on my face?
Never mind, movie's reviewing itself for me.
So Light is given detention. When left alone, Light examines the book he picked up in the rain, which he finds has been given the title Death Note. Suddenly the lights go off, and all of the staff seems to forget their running detention, as the Death Note's keeper appears, slowly revealing himself to Light. And let me tell you, that reveal is, it's something else.
Okay. I'm gonna ignore that awful acting. Here's why this scene doesn't work.
those who aren't familiar with the anime when watching this movie won't be aware of who this figure is. That's fine, whatever. But the problem is, most of the people who saw this movie, myself included, already know who Ryuk is. The reveal is more of a time waster than anything, mainly because of how slow it's dragged out. We already know who's here, and just by looking at him, we know what he's gonna look like for the rest of the film. We aren't scared by this. But okay, you can argue maybe the people who don't know Ryuk will be scared by this. Well, that doesn't work either because the reveal is so slow that it gives everyone time to process what's in front of them. When the threat is processed, it's less of an intimidating factor. And when you've got Light screaming here like a little bitch, it makes the scene more funny than anything. So who on earth is supposed to be scared by this? So this brooding bed of spikes with legs is Ryuk, the keeper of the Death Note, played by Willem Dafoe, and as far as this movie goes, he is the best part. It's basically his acting from Spider-Man, except it makes sense here. But come on, if you were to listen to the anime version and the movie version side by side, you wouldn't be able to tell a difference.
You've already figured out that what you have is no ordinary notebook.
Dreams are places you can have fun, right?
I'm not gonna do anything to you.
It's all in your mind, so why not enjoy it?
And even though I don't like a lot of the shots in this movie, anything with Ryuk most of the time looks really good. I especially like this shot here when the police lights are casting a silhouette on him. But in scenes where he clearly can be seen, he doesn't look good at all. I don't necessarily approve of a full CG look. I mean, you can kind of do that with makeup if you have the time. It would take a long time, it wouldn't be cheap, but it would look a hell of a lot better than this. Ryuk explains to Light that he can use the book to end someone's life, and encourages him to try it out on Kenny, who is out in the street. Now, this is a little different than the source material, making him more of a devil's advocate rather than a neutral advisor that he was before, but I think it works for a short time frame that the movie is given. Giving him that devil on your shoulder attitude helps the pace of the movie, which is a good thing, because everything else in this movie tries to drag it along. And besides, it gives him something to do, unlike the anime. I mean, come on, as much as I love him in the anime, all he really did was eat apples and find cameras. At least in the movie, he does a bit more than that. So Light decides to test the book out, and unfortunately, Kenny is the first to go in probably the stupidest series of freak events I've ever seen.
Oh my god! They killed Kenny! You bastards!
Okay, first off, it's a book that kills people, okay? That's enough. You don't need this stupid Final Destination crap. Second of all, that ladder is nowhere near sharp enough to leave a paper cut, much less take someone's head off. I mean, at the very worst, this ladder would probably break your nose, maybe, but it wouldn't cut half of your head off no matter how fast you apply the brakes. I mean, it probably could, but you'd probably have to be going much faster than this van. Someone get film theory on this. I don't have time to do the math.
How can this be possible?
It happened, just like that. And if this is possible, imagine what else you could do.
A little while after, Light ends up meeting Mia, and tries to actually show her his notebook with the power to kill anyone.
Using another unintentionally hilarious death, by the way.
And like a sane person, she finds this I don't get it.
Come on, Light. I think there's a bit of a fault in your stars there. Oh wait, the guy who plays Light was in that.
So Light and Mia both decide to use the notebook together to start getting rid of criminals around the world. Cut to some time later, and the greatest investigator in the world, L, is hot on their tail, figuring out that not only has Kira been trying to make people think that the killer is in Japan, but even going so far as to find the exact city he's in. L, at first glance, got me really excited, because at first he was just like he was before. Now at first glance, it seemed that a few small changes had been made.
No, not that, goddammit.
I mean more like making Wataru more of a father figure than an actual assistant like he was in the anime. But all things considered, I didn't mind it too much. He was intellectual, he hid his identity, stayed out of the public eye, even put together solid reasoning for why he was there to begin with.
It was almost perfect. Until he reveals his identity in the middle of a police station that anyone could walk into, made a public appearance on television, loses his cool 20 minutes into being in the movie, and starts throwing all reason out the window just to try to catch Kira. I should just be used to disappointment by now.
Shortly after L's press conference, however, cops start dying left and right out of nowhere. Light wasn't the one who wrote down the names, however, so he immediately accuses Ryuk, who basically doesn't really give him an answer on the subject. Meanwhile, Elf manages to deduce that Light Turner is the only person who can beat Kira and decides to pay him a visit. But unfortunately, director Adam Wingard's line of logic for L was, he did kind of weird stuff in the anime, so let's make him do a bunch of bull crazy shit in our movie. And unfortunately, all the scene really does is highlight that. So L, being kind of an idiot in this version, immediately accuses Light of being Kira, but with no evidence to back it up, it doesn't go anywhere. So in retaliation for this, Light decides to use the notebook to get Wataru, L's assistant, to find L's real name, because a name and a face are needed in order for the Death Note to work.
Well, Light, you're a bit out of luck, because guess what? Wataru isn't even his real name. You need his real name in order for it to work, so you can't just write Wataru down in the notebook and expect it to work.
My name is Wataru. This information is not known to me.
Alright, hang on one minute.
Now, I can already hear some of you saying,
"But director, they changed Light's name. Why aren't you complaining about that?"
First of all, changing Yagami to Turner is a region choice and nothing further. You see this? They called this Goku in Dragon Ball Evolution. This isn't Goku. This isn't Yagami. Secondly, what kind of moron who's working for the greatest detective on the face of the planet leaves his true identity open for everyone to hear? Why wouldn't you have an alias so that no one found out who you really were? Are you that stupid? Wataru explains to Light that he does not know L's real name offhand. He says that the only place that it can be found is the orphanage in which L was raised, so Light tells him to go over and find his real name. But he only has 48 hours to do so before he dies at the hands of the notebook. With Wataru going missing, L flips his lid rather easily and orders the police to raid Light's house in search of any evidence to where he might be, to which they find nothing. Cut to the next night, and Light and Mia are planning to go to prom. It is on this night that they will finally make their final action against L and be rid of him once and for all. Wataru just makes it to the orphanage just moments before his death, and Light tries to burn the page with Wataru's name on it to prevent him from being killed. Strangely though, the page appears to be missing from the note, which means, as you might have guessed by now, Wataru ends up biting it.
Are you Wataru?
I am Wataru.
Sorry.
You said dealer's choice.
It's only at this point that Light finally realizes that the only person who could have taken Wataru's name out of the notebook could have been Mia. So he goes back to the main gymnasium to confront her, where she reveals that she wrote Light's name in the notebook so she could have the book all to herself.
Wait a second. There's a theme to this!
Everything that happens to Light Turner is a situation where someone around him is more evil than him. Mia, Kenny, even Elle at certain points, all are portrayed as people with darker or crazier intentions than Light, making Light the least evil amongst all of them.
Now, that doesn't sound like a problem at first, right?
Except when you take into consideration that Light Yagami, from the original work, although the main character, is technically the villain in this entire story. The police, the special investigation teams, and even the mob at one point, none of which came close to the evil that Light represented. The Light from the show was a manipulator, a megalomaniac, someone who would always look after himself first. He was someone who was willing to use anyone and everyone around him to get the upper hand, even so far as to kill people after he's done using them, no matter what previous relationship he might have had with them. The Light in the show made a transition from a kind and well-mannered academic to a manipulative serial killer, to the point where even in the end, we began to see Light as less and less of the protagonist that he saw himself as. Even visually, if you look at Light at the beginning of the show and at the end of the show, it's almost like he's a completely different person. That kind of perspective is uncommon in modern media, and even so, very few people have been able to pull it off quite like Death Note.
But in this movie,
even after using the notebook to kill hundreds of people, Light is still portrayed as the least evil in this story. Every single thing that he does is morally justified simply because the people around him are either more evil or more crazy. Mia, who is portrayed as the love interest in this version, wants to get rid of Light so she can have the book for herself. Elle ultimately is shown as someone who will go to any lengths, even murder, just to get back at someone. Hell, even if we go all the way back to Kenny's death, even that death is justified simply because of the things that he's done. By doing this, it completely shatters the original intention of the source material. And even if you don't consider that, it doesn't hold well on its own, simply because every single one of these characters in this movie is so absolutely unlikable. You can't attach to anyone because of their actions, so even if some characters are the focal point, if we don't like them, we're not going to care about anything that happens to them. Mia explains to Light that she took out Watary's name from the notebook because she didn't want Light to burn it. Only one name can be burnt from the notebook, and after that, no one else can be saved. So by doing this, she allowed Light to have a chance to save himself, but only if he gets the notebook for her. Light goes to get the notebook for Mia, but the cops arrive looking for Light, so he makes a break for it. Meanwhile, Elle learns of the tragic news and decides that enough is enough. He grabs Judge Dredd's auto pistol and makes haste to find and kill Light. He gets in a car with no ability to drive it and ends up causing probably more property damage than anything, and manages to corner him in an alleyway.
Wait! I'm just gonna turn around really slowly.
But someone who is especially grateful to Kira decides to knock Elle out.
This man is Kita. I'm working with law enforcement in order to capture
And Light tells Mia to meet him on the docks by the Ferris wheel. The police corner them and they have no choice but to board it. Mia and Light argue and fight over the book, but then the Ferris wheel starts to fall apart.
You know, I absolutely love it when Ferris wheels just conveniently fall apart when it's convenient for the plot. It just adds so much. It hasn't been done before, but it's a nice change. Like, it works so well, and I'm so glad it's in here. Please kill me.
Light tries to save Mia from falling, but the page of the notebook she's holding onto rips off, causing her to fall. And they have the song I Don't Want to Live Without Your Love by Chicago playing during this scene, and it's so out of tone with what's going on that it is the funniest thing you will ever see. But unfortunately, due to copyright, I can't play that, so I'll have to find some other way to make this scene funny. Oh, I know. Mia dies from the fall. Light falls into the water and is sent into a 2-day coma over time. And Elle is sent back to wherever he came from for not being able to find and catch Kira. But he remembers something that Light said while holding him at gunpoint about a textbook, which as it turns out is for a subject that he never took that semester, but Mia did. He stops the plane and goes to Mia's house to find said book. He then finds Watary's torn page in the book and proceeds to write something on it.
Fine. Whatever. Movie's almost over. I don't care anymore.
Light ends up waking up from his coma, where his father figures out that Light is in fact Kira. Light then goes over his step-by-step process of how he was able to worm his way out of the entire situation, and then Ryuk appears out of nowhere. Oh yeah, I should also probably note that this scene and the scene I just talked about with L are happening in between each other. So when L goes to write something on the page, we then see Ryuk enter the picture, and yeah, it's kind of implied here that L ended up killing Light. But we're not even given time to think of that because the movie just abruptly ends at this point. And unfortunately, not being able to end like a sitcom is not a thing here.
You humans are so interesting.
And at long last, the movie is finally over. My God. However, I don't think it's fair for me to end just yet. The last 4 big reviews I did, all I really did was either trash or praise a movie and just left it there. But honestly, that may have just been me following the mold of other reviewers doing the same thing. I mean, it's practically commonplace at this point. People love seeing other people talk trash about something they don't like all the time. That's the easy way to go, and at one time, I think I might have agreed with that. But now, I think it's time I tried something different. When you do a story that people have heard already, several times in fact, it already starts anyone who knows that original story with less investment in the movie itself. Granted, you could argue that with any movie based on a book, like, say, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, for example. Yes, I know. I said philosopher. That's how I've always known it. I know it's different here. Bite me. If you read the entire original book and then go to see the movie directly afterwards, you aren't going to be too surprised by the movie's story simply because you've already read the book and are already familiar with the source material. Ergo, nothing's going to catch you off guard in that regard. However, there are certain things that happen in the movie that may or may not happen in ways you might have imagined in the book. In other words, even though the movie stays fairly true to the source material, it still manages to keep things interesting. That's the kind of balance you want to maintain with an adaptation: source faithfulness and original creativity. If you have that balance, things are going to work out fairly well for you. Problem is, the Death Note movie doesn't exactly do that. Mainly because we've already seen Death Note be adapted once into the anime. We already know what it would look like to dramatize the written work. The Philosopher's Stone may have had that advantage. When you boil down to retelling the same story, it can just come down to presentation style. And when you're adapting an original work, if you aren't telling a brand new story, you're already at a predisposition for failure if you're just going with the motions. But at the same time, copying the exact same thing word for word isn't going to help you either. Now, I can't necessarily speak for this case in the Japanese Death Note movies. I haven't quite seen them yet. Although from what I have seen of it, it looks like the funniest thing I'm ever going to watch this year. I think the best thing I could possibly ask myself in a situation of balance like this is the following question. If I were given total creative freedom over a Death Note movie, one I would be able to make anything I want, what would I make it about? For me, that answer is extremely simple. I would tell a prequel story, one that takes place before the events of the original story, one story that's unknown to the main community, one that brings stronger connections to characters we see in the original by viewing them in the past. For example, I think I would make a prequel story around L's very first case, and I think I'd even throw in a then FBI agent who would become an integral part of the Kira crisis later on. It sounds ambitious, right? I'd have to spend a long time writing a story that not only holds up as a movie on its own, but also acts as a film to tie into an already existing anime. Well, what if I were to tell you that I didn't have to look very far? What if I told you that there exists out there, unbeknownst to a majority of the fanbase of Death Note, a prequel story to Death Note that officially was recognized by the original creators of the manga as part of the saga's canon? What if I were to tell you that there was, in fact, another note? Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you... Dang it. Son of a... Another Note, the Los Angeles BB murder cases. This novel was written by Nisio Isin, I hope I pronounced that right, and is officially recognized by... Okay, out of respect, I'm not going to try to pronounce these guys' names. The original creators of the Death Note manga, and tell the story of the first case that L ever cracked as an investigator. This is relatively unknown in the Death Note community as far as I know of, because not a lot of people I've talked to seem to know of its existence. Hell, I didn't even know it existed until a couple of months ago. I didn't even know it wasn't a manga. It's a whole novel that I cleared in about 2 days. Yeah, there's a lot of good source material to draw from this. You could easily adapt this into a live-action movie already set in America, given that the story takes place in Los Angeles. And not only that, because this story has never been dramatized as far as I know of, you can go ham with this. You can be as stylized as you want. You can do whatever you want with it. Because guess what? No one's done anything with this. At least, not yet anyway.
You know what? Someone get me the number for Netflix so I can call them and give them an idea for a prequel for this. But I'm willing to bet, because of how easy it is to get all this crap on their service, I'm willing to bet it is going to be extremely easy to get this idea across to them. Hell, I'll direct it myself if I have to.
And so, this concludes my review for Death Note 2017. Honestly, if it weren't for the fact that everyone jumped onto the hate train with this so quickly, I might have never even heard of this movie, and I probably would have been a lot better off. And if it weren't for me writing myself into a corner last episode, I probably would have reviewed something else by now, given how long this has taken. And you know what? I'll be perfectly fair. There's some good cinematography in here, some of the acting isn't that bad, and yeah, I did get a laugh here and there. But for the few things that it gets right, there are way too many things it gets wrong for me to completely ignore.
Though now that I think about it, this just brings up a much bigger issue. This is just one step to the downward spiral staircase that is movie adaptations. What on earth is going so wrong with these?
Strap yourselves in, folks. We might not be done just yet.
Sucker, I'm a young and good fucker. Hey, hand in your sucker, I'm a young and good fucker. Hey, hand in your sucker, I'm a young and good fucker. Hey, hand in your sucker, I'm a young and good fucker. Hey.